Good morning, second graders. I'm Mrs. Couch, and this is this week's library lesson. And this week, we're going to be reading a story about Martin Luther King Jr. In honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day that we just celebrated on Monday. Let's go ahead and get started. Our learning target this week is I can recall facts I know to help me learn something new. So we're gonna talk about and think about what do we already know about Martin Luther King Jr. and why do we celebrate on this day? Why do we take a day off every year? And so today we're going to start out with watching a video about Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King Jr. Day and why he is such a great man. What did he do? And how do we celebrate it today? And some questions I want you to think about. Do you know what discrimination means? Do you know what segregation is? Are you aware of what the civil rights movement is? Some of you might be, but not all of you. And we'll talk about that after the video is over. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch our video, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Okay, here we go.
The third Monday in January is observed as the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. and is an official U.S. holiday. Dr. King's actual birthday is January 15th. Dr. King was a church and community leader who spoke out against racial discrimination, the unfair treatment of people based on the color of their skin or where they came from. His voice became familiar to millions of people during the Civil Rights Movement, a time when many people were working hard to change unfair laws. These laws prevented many African Americans from using public areas, going to certain schools, or even entering some stores and restaurants. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed people should stand up for what is right and stop injustice any way they can, but never through the use of violence. As recognition for his ideas and dedication, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. The Civil Rights Movement led to historic changes in our country's laws. In 1994, the U.S. government encouraged Americans to use the King holiday as a national day of volunteer action. Now, on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service, volunteers across the country donate their time to making a difference. How would you like to volunteer your time on the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Great video. Some things we really learned. First of all, did you know what discrimination was before the video? Well, discrimination is treating someone differently or unfairly because of the color of their skin. So during the time that Martin Luther King Jr. was alive and working, that was a real thing. And so he was fighting against that discrimination. Also, the civil rights movement was a period of time in our country, in our history, where people were working hard to stop and to repeal unfair laws against, um, well, that promoted discrimination and segregation. And segregation, of course, is keeping people apart because of their skin color. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did this all in a very non-violent way. Do you know what that means? What is non-violent? Yet non-violent means that he didn't use violence at all. He did speeches. They did marches where lots of people would get together and march up, a certain length of, for a while. They would gather. They would do protests. They would do sit-ins, but they never ever hurt anyone or never did anything where anyone was harmed. And that is what nonviolent means. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was very much against any kind of violence. Even though he was trying to change things and he was trying to change the laws, he didn't use violence to do that. And that, I don't know about you, but do you think that's a good way of doing things? Yeah, I think it is. It's a good way of changing things, letting people know how you feel about something, but not doing it in a non-violent way. So let's continue on with our lesson. Another thing, one of the things that we already knew before we started this lesson is that we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. Another thing we knew before we started this lesson is what nonfiction is. So can you tell me what is nonfiction? Yeah, it's a book or a type of writing that has facts. It's all true. It's real events and real people. So our story we're reading today, our book we're reading today is called My Uncle Martin's Big Heart. Now, this is a really special story because this book was written and this story was written by a little girl, and her name was Angela, and she was the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this is a true story of things about his life and a true story of how she remembers her uncle. Now, this is a very special kind of book. A true story about somebody's life is called a what? I think you might know what this is called. It's called a biography. Now, this biography is more of a memoir, and a memoir is something, memories about someone, true memories about someone, written by somebody about someone. And so this is kind of a memoir about Martin Luther King Jr. It's a really great story, and it comes from the perspective of his niece and how he treated her and what she remembers about him. So I hope you enjoy this. Okay, we're going to read our story, and then after we read the book, we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so here we go. Hope you enjoy the story.
This book is called My Uncle Martin's Big Heart, a story about Martin Luther King Jr. through the eyes of his niece. Now, it was written by his niece, Angela Ferris Watkins, who was a PhD, which is a doctor, illustrated by Eric Velasquez. Now, this book is what we call a memoir. It's not really a biography because it doesn't have a lot of facts and things about his life, but it's more of a memoir. Now, a memoir is like a memory of something, and it's in the nonfiction section because it's about real people. It's a real niece remembering her real uncle, who happened to be Martin Luther King Jr. Now, he died when she was about 4 years old. So this is her story as a little girl and how he saw her Uncle Martin and his big heart. Okay, let's go ahead and read it. My Uncle Martin's Big Heart. This is a dedication page, and she dedicates it to her family and her parents. Have you heard of the man who spoke out, "I have a dream"? He was a great civil rights leader and an American hero. Do you remember his name? I'll give you a hint. His first name was Martin. There he is doing his "I have a dream" speech at Washington, D.C. Yes, his name was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but to me, he was Uncle Martin. Actually, he was Uncle ML. ML was our family's nickname for him. The M stood for Martin, and the L stood for Luther. My brother Isaac, my cousins Alveda, Alfred, Derek, Darlene, and Vernon, and I all called him Uncle ML. I liked the sound of his nickname. It was fun to say. Most people did not know that Martin Luther King Jr. had a family nickname, so usually when we went out in public, we just called him Uncle Martin. People didn't see Uncle ML the way I saw him. What the world remembers about Martin Luther King Jr. is that he was a man who changed things. They remember that he worked hard to change laws in America so that all people had equal rights. They remember that he marched and protested and that he made hundreds of speeches and wrote several books. What they saw was a man who inspired thousands of people to join him in helping to change America. But I saw something different. There was something very special about Uncle ML. I remember that my uncle loved to spend time with his family and send telegrams while he was away. He loved to laugh and make others laugh. He loved to work. He loved God and all people, and something else. He spoke with a great big voice. Uncle ML worked very long and hard protecting protesting, writing, and speaking. But he spent as much of his time as he could with his wife, my Aunt Coretta, and their 4 children, my cousins Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. He loved them all very dearly. It was rather amazing that Uncle Emil still found time to spend with the rest of us. Uncle Emil often came to our house for a visit. One time when he came over, I told him how my mother had scolded me. I imitated her voice and pointed my finger as I told Uncle Emil what she said. "You broke my pocketbook." Although I wasn't trying to make him smile, Uncle Emil's smile made me forget how scared I was that I had broke my mother's purse. He wanted me to say it over and over again. He thought I was funny. No matter how hard Uncle Emil worked or how tired he was, he would still come for a visit. Once he was so tired he fell asleep on our living room couch with his shoes on. Can you imagine? My mother said we should never lie on the living room couch, and certainly not with shoes on. How could this be? Uncle Emil had on his white shirt, his tie, his gold watch, and his black shoes. I guess my mother knew how tired Uncle Emil was from all the good work he was doing, and she didn't want to bother him. Uncle Emil stayed in touch with us even while he was out of town. The day after I was born, Uncle Emil sent a telegram to my mother, his sister Christine, congratulating her on my birth. Uncle Emil sent it all the way from California to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was born. He was in California working, but still he took the time to welcome me into this world. The telegram said, May 30th, 1964. Congratulations to my dear sister on the arrival of my new beautiful niece. May the struggle for human dignity, which now engulfs our nation, pave the way for a brighter tomorrow and a glorious future for Angela Christine. Love, Emil. It sounded almost like a prayer. Uncle Emil was a preacher, and a good one, too. He was also co-pastor of our church, Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, for many years. His father, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., my granddaddy, was the pastor. Uncle Emil loved God, and he loved to preach. He helped people understand God's love. He wrote many sermons, and he preached to the members of our church about the same thing that he spoke to American citizens about, how to love one another. Uncle Emil spoke to thousands and thousands of people during his lifetime. Many people say that he was a great orator or a great speaker. I think it's because Uncle Emil had such a great voice. It made people pay attention to what he said, and it made them feel good, the same way it made me feel. Most of the time, Uncle Emil had a serious expression, especially when he was speaking. Like when he delivered his I Have a Dream speech. He spoke about the dream of a better America, where all people would love one another, no matter the color of their skin. Laughter was not usually what the world saw when they looked at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When he was around us, however, Uncle Emil laughed a lot. His laughter showed in his face more than in his voice. When Uncle Emil laughed, his face would light up so that others around him would laugh. Every time I think about it, it makes me want to laugh. Church was where I spent most of my favorite time with Uncle Emil. He and I frequently shared a very special moment right after church at Ebenezer. I would stay in the children's nursery during the church service. When church ended, an adult from the nursery would bring me upstairs to the sanctuary. Uncle Emil would stand in front of the pulpit after a sermon and greet the members of the church who waited in line to speak to him. When Uncle Emil saw me coming, he would step aside from the line, move into the aisle, and bend down. I would run down the aisle in my very best dress and with my pigtails flying in the air to meet him. Uncle Emil would pick me up and give me a kiss and a great big hug. So that was the thing she remembered most about him. In those special moments, I could feel Uncle Emil saying, I love you. That's what made Uncle Emil so special. He had a very, very big heart, and it was all full of love. Uncle Emil loved America. He wanted it to be the best country, a country where people of all races and colors could be treated with respect. He worked hard to show people how to change things by using love instead of hate. Today, people all over the world know about Martin Luther King Jr. They read about him in books. They listen to his speeches, and they read the books that he wrote. Millions of people visit Atlanta to see where he was born, the church where he preached, and the place where he is buried. There are many streets, schools, and other buildings named in honor his honor throughout America. Every year, the country celebrates Martin Luther King Jr. Day on the third Monday in January. It's all because he was an ordinary man with an extraordinary love. And that is the end of our story. There's a picture of him and his niece who wrote the story.
All right, great book. I love that on the back we have a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and his niece Angela. That's actually a true picture of the two of them. And I love in the story how she talks about how kind and gentle he was, and that they didn't call him Uncle Martin in when they were with the family, that the family all called him Uncle ML, which stood for Martin Luther. But when they were out in public, everyone called him Martin, so they called him Uncle Martin out in public. So I thought that was interesting. I also love the story, the part of the story where she runs to him at the end of the church services, and he picks her up in his arms and he hugs her, and that's actually what this picture is of right here on the back. So really good story. We learn a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. here, and about what kind of a man he was. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you that we have on here is we have an extra slide. I always put these on here just so that you have extra things. So if you want to learn more about Martin Luther King Jr., we have extra stuff here. We have extra books. These are some books. Here's some more books. This down here is another video you can watch. I think there's a video up here. This one's also a video. But if you click on the different things, I think this one right here is actually a song, if you liked it. And this one right here is how to draw Martin Luther King Jr. So if you really love to draw, that's a good one for you. So today we have learned about Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We learned that it is a time to celebrate a man who was instrumental in the civil rights movement. He helped to end segregation and discrimination in our country. A lot of laws were changed because of what he did. In 1994, we started celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day like in the 80s, but in 1994, it became a day of service. So basically now today, a lot of people take that day off that they get and they go out and do community service projects. They help other people, acts of kindness. So that's something that maybe you might want to do next year when we get our day off, because every year we do get Martin Luther King Jr. Day off. And I really felt like this was something that would be good information for you. Okay, you know what time it is? It's time for Crazy Jokes with Mrs. Couch. We've come to the end of our lesson, and it's time for a little fun. So here is our joke for the week. Now, it is a winter-themed joke because we're still in the winter. It's January. So here we go. What do you call a snowman party? I don't know. Do you give up? It's a snowball. Go out and share that one with somebody. I hope it helps to make them laugh, just like it helps me laugh. And I really enjoyed our time together today. We'll see you next time, and keep reading.